In today's Desi Teacher Diary, I'll share the most distressing thing I noticed when recently watching Vicky Kaushal's new movie Udham Singh a few days ago. This movie has one long emotional scene set in Jallianwala Bagh, where the British forces had opened fire on thousands of unarmed civilians. This is probably the longest Jallianwala Bagh massacre scene I've seen in any movie. Reginald Dyer was at the command of the firing line. But what struck me in this scene, these were not the British soldiers who were firing on those unarmed civilians and who fired 1,650 rounds in less than 10 minutes. And who were these soldiers? We'll try to find an answer to this question in today's diary. So, let's recreate the scene. April 13, 1919. A festival of harvest, a celebration of life. Also, a peaceful, unarmed gathering of thousands of people to protest the draconian Rowlatt Act, which had banned all forms of public dissent and protest against the British authorities anywhere in British India. Fathers brought their sons, mothers carried their infants wrapped in dupattas, street vendors sold ganna juice and roasted chole. It was more like a mela scene all around, with protest speeches sprinkled here and there. Some people came to listen to the words of protest, to speak no to the Rowlatt Act, to hope for dignity as British subjects. Nobody came there to die. But history is ruthless. It waits long in silence. And that day, it waited at Jallianwala Bagh. At 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon, the narrow entrance of the Bagh was sealed. In fact, I visited that place last year. It's not a garden. It's more like a big courtyard with houses on all four sides, just like you see in old cities like Lahore and Rawalpindi, only with a couple of small alleys to go in and come out. In this courtyard, the soldiers entered with loaded rifles through those narrow alleyways. But these soldiers were no British. These soldiers were Indians, all 90 of them, except one, General Reginald Dyer himself. 48 Gurkhas from Nepal, 32 Pathans from the frontier province, 10 of them were Punjabi Muslims, and a few turbaned Sikhs outside of the courtyard, manning the narrow entryways. They were posted outside on purpose. The colonial troops, under British command, Indians wanted to fire other unarmed Indians. Again, this crowd was a mix of Sikhs, Hindus, and Muslims, but all were Punjabis. And their killers, almost all from outside of their land. They were not Punjabis. That's not an accident. That was an intentional design. This is not just a story of a massacre. It's a story about how an empire weaponizes identity, how ethnic divisions become rifle triggers, how loyalty gets hijacked by the ruthless, how a military uniform can swallow a living, breathing soul into blindness. General Dyer pulled the trigger, but he wasn't alone. The British Empire had prepared him for that moment for decades, turning Indians into instruments of Indian oppression. This massacre was not just a crime of bullets. It was a crime of psychology, an assault on identity. To understand what happened at Jallianwala Bagh, first we must understand how the British engineered the structure of the army. After the 1857 uprising, which they call Ghadar in some parts, the British had learned a lesson. United Indians are dangerous. Divided Indians are controllable. So they built an army, not of a nation, but of ethnic fragments. Sikhs here, Gurkhas there, Pathans to one side, Rajputs to the other. Bengalis excluded, South Indians separated, Muslims grouped by region, and Hindus grouped by caste. They call some races martial races, and others weaklings. Flattery became a leash, divide, rank, reward, control. And when rebellion comes, send one Indian to kill another. No British blood spilled. No British guilt carried. Dyer didn't trust Punjabi troops to shoot Punjabis, so he made sure the killers didn't look like the victims. That's not military strategy. That's ethnic calculation. He blocked the exits. He gave no warning, and then he ordered, fire, until the ammunition is finished. They fired 1,650 rounds into the thickest part of the crowd, not in the air, not at the legs, at the heart, at the back, at the fleeing, at the fallen. Dyer later said before the Hunter Commission, "It was not a mistake. Mine was a deliberate act." But here's a deeper question. Why did those Indian soldiers obey those heinous orders? Because obedience is not born, it's trained. The colonial army trained Indian soldiers not to think, but just to obey. Your regiment is your family. Your officer is your father. Your oath is to the king. Disobedience meant jail, execution, family dishonored, pension revoked. Loyalty was rewarded. Hesitation was punished. They were praised as brave Gurkhas, loyal Pathans, honorable Sikhs, but never as Indians. They were taught to look down on each other, to shoot without guilt when ordered, to serve the officer without question. Because when you control identity, you control the hand on the trigger. Some soldiers hesitated. Some looked away. Some even cried while shooting. But not one disobeyed those orders. Why? Because they weren't just killing people. They were following training. They were following fear. They were following the empire. Inside the Bagh, there stood a well. Today, we call it Martyr's Well, Shahidanga Coup. That day, over 120 people jumped into that coup, into that well, preferring to drown themselves rather than face Indian bullets. That is what engineered loyalty does. It makes death seem kinder than mercy. This wasn't just a massacre of bodies. It was a massacre of identity, a massacre of unity. It wasn't just the horror of General Dyer. It was also a betrayal of Indians for Indians. It wasn't just violence. It was a plan to instill terror deep in the heart of hope. Dyer didn't just kill people. He made Indians kill Indians and ensure they didn't recognize each other while doing it. This is how you break a country, not through war, but through divisions among its people. The British House of Lords praised General Dyer. British citizens raised funds to thank him for his service to the country, to the empire. Indians remembered him differently. Rabindranath Tagore returned his knighthood. Mohandas Gandhi launched countrywide non-cooperation movement. And a young boy named Udham Singh, like the one in Vicky Kaushал's movie, in the blood-soaked Jallianwala Bagh, vowing never to forget. 21 years later, he would cross the oceans and shoot Michael O'Dwyer, not the General Dyer. Michael O'Dwyer was a former Lieutenant Governor of Punjab who ordered General Dyer to shoot. He shot Michael O'Dwyer right in the heart of London. Because grief remembers forever. Justice waits for decades. and the truth does return. So what do we learn from this tragedy? That identity can be turned into a weapon. That ethnicity can be engineered for malice. That colonization doesn't just steal land, it steals a mind. Jallianwala Bagh was not just political repression. It was the execution of a racial military strategy, designed, directed, delivered. Today, the empire is gone, but the method lives on. Divide, distract, and disempower. And the biggest weapon? Convincing people the enemy is we, each other. Jallianwala Bagh is not just a tragedy of the past. It's also a warning to the future. If we let ourselves be divided again, if we fight neighbors instead of fighting injustice, if we forget who loaded the rifles, we invite many more German Dyers to rise again and again. And history will not forgive us if we let that happen.